A wealthy father watches in silence as a black bricklayer feeds his blind daughter, and it changes his life forever. Victor Stone, a millionaire, stood motionless in his garden, unable to look away from the unexpected scene unfolding before him. Before we jump into this story, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your comment below. Let's see how far this story reaches. A black bricklayer, his hands calloused and his clothes worn from work, was gently feeding his daughter Ella, the same daughter he could barely look in the eye since the accident that left her blind 2 years ago. "There, little Lottie, just one more spoonful," David Miller said with a kindness that made Victor feel as if a knife were twisting in his chest. Ella laughed, a sound Victor had almost forgotten. At 8 years old, she hadn't smiled like that in her father's presence in a long time. The girl raised her hand, finding David's face with surprising accuracy. "Tell me more about the colors in the garden, David," she asked. "I want to see through your eyes." Victor recoiled into the shadows of the terrace, feeling a toxic mixture of shame and anger growing inside him. How could this man who had known Ella for only 2 weeks connect with her in a way that he, her own father, could no longer? Stone Construction was one of the largest companies in the country, specializing in luxury buildings that transformed the urban landscape. But Victor Stone couldn't build a bridge to his own daughter's heart. The accident had happened on an ordinary afternoon. A drunk driver, a blind curve, and Ella's life was changed forever. Victor had been behind the wheel. Physically, he had walked away unscathed. Emotionally, he was a wreck, drowning in work and guilt. Since then, Ella had been living under the care of well-paid nannies and nurses, while Victor hid away in the upper floors of his mansion or in his office in the city. The arrival of the garden renovation team, led by David Miller, should not have altered this dysfunctional dynamic. However, something was changing, and Victor didn't know how to deal with it. "Mr. Stone?" The voice of his housekeeper, Mrs. Hamilton, interrupted his dark thoughts. "You have an important call from China about the Shanghai project." Victor nodded mechanically, casting one last glance at the garden before heading to his office. As he walked down the hallway, he paused in front of the framed photograph of his late wife, Isabella. "You would have known what to do," he murmured. "You always knew." At that afternoon's meeting with investors, Victor was distant, his mind returning repeatedly to the scene in the garden. When he returned home, he found Mrs. Hamilton waiting with a worried expression. "Sir," Ella's piano teacher called. "She missed her third lesson in a row." "What do you mean? Didn't the nurse take her?" "Ella refused to go, sir. She said," the housekeeper hesitated, "she said she hates the piano now that she can't see the keys." Victor felt the weight of guilt grow even heavier. Isabella had been a pianist, and Ella had always loved her lessons. That night, unable to sleep, Victor went down to the kitchen to get a glass of water. He was surprised to hear voices coming from the garden. Approaching the back door quietly, he saw David sitting by the fountain with Ella, well after working hours. "My father doesn't love me anymore since I went blind," the girl said with a certainty that tore Victor's heart apart. "He can't even be in the same room with me." "Don't say that, little one." David's voice was firm but gentle. "Sometimes adults don't know how to deal with pain, especially the pain of the people they love most." "Have you lost someone you loved?" Ella asked. A long silence followed before David answered. "Yes, my daughter Lily. She was almost your age." Victor froze. Something in David's voice, a deep familiar pain, kept him rooted to the shadows. "What happened to her?" Ella asked. "She was sick. Leukemia. We fought for 3 years, but—" David took a deep breath. "What I learned, Ella, is that the time we have with the people we love is too precious to waste on fear." Victor recoiled, silent as a shadow, his whole world crumbling as he realized the true nature of his behavior. It wasn't protection, it was cowardice. And as he climbed the stairs back to his empty room, one question haunted him. What kind of man abandoned his own daughter in her hour of greatest need, while a stranger, who carried his own devastating pain, found the strength to offer her comfort? What Victor didn't know was that David Miller wasn't just a simple bricklayer with a kind heart. There was much more to his story than anyone in that mansion could have imagined, and the truths that would emerge in the coming weeks would forever change the fate of everyone involved. If this story of guilt, redemption, and unlikely connections touched your heart, Be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how the meeting between these two men, broken by life but united by their love for the same child, will trigger a series of revelations that no one could have predicted. In the days that followed, Victor intensified his investigation into David. He discreetly hired a specialized company, something routine in his business. I want everything about him, especially about this daughter he mentioned. He ordered the investigator over the phone, without taking his eyes off the monitor displaying the garden cameras. Through them, he watched David and Ella. The bricklayer showed impressive patience, transforming the garden into a sensory space for the girl, teaching her to identify plants by touch and scent, describing colors with analogies she could understand. This red is like the warmth of the sun on your face on a summer afternoon, Victor heard him explain as Ella touched a rose. The accuracy of that description haunted him. The report arrived in 3 days. Victor opened the envelope with trembling fingers. David Miller, 42 years old. Graduated with honors in civil engineering. Married to Sophie Miller, deceased, cancer. Father of Lily Miller, deceased, leukemia at age 7. After consecutive losses, he abandoned his promising career. A close source says he needed to do something with his hands to keep from going crazy. He started as a gardening assistant, eventually moving into construction. Victor walked away in a daze. David wasn't just a bricklayer, he was an engineer who could have been managing entire projects. How could he smile after losing everything? That night, for the first time since the accident, Victor entered Ella's room while she was asleep. Hesitantly, he touched her hair, the first real contact in almost 2 years. The next morning, he did something surprising. He canceled 3 important meetings and prepared a picnic. Ella came down for breakfast and found her father waiting. I thought we could spend the day together. In the garden, perhaps. The shock on the girl's face was followed by a radiant smile. Really, Dad? Aren't you too busy? That innocent question destroyed him inside. The day was awkward at first. They sat near where David was working. When the bricklayer appeared, he made a move to walk away. David. Ella llamó reconociendo sus pasos. My dad is with me today. Come meet him. The two men exchanged a look laden with unspoken meanings. In the weeks that followed, a new routine established itself. Victor watched, trying to understand how someone who had lost so much could give so much. One particularly pleasant afternoon, he approached David. How do you do it? He asked, the vulnerability exposed in his voice. After everything, how can you be so present for my daughter when I, her own father, can barely look at her without choking on my guilt? David paused his work. When Lily was dying, she made me promise something, Daddy. Promise you'll keep seeing the colors? I didn't understand it at the time. He looked at Ella, sitting near the fountain. Your daughter is alive, Mr. Stone. She needs you to see her colors, not just your blindness. Those words hit Victor like a bolt of lightning. For 2 years, he had seen only the disability, not the vibrant child. The next day, something unexpected happened. In his office, Victor received an anonymous envelope. Inside was a medical file and a note. You need to know the truth about the doctor who treated your daughter. The file contained serious allegations against Dr. Stevens, the neurologist who had declared Ella permanently blind. The doctor apparently had a history of hasty diagnoses and inappropriate treatments, quietly transferred between hospitals after lawsuits covered up by confidentiality agreements. Victor felt his blood run cold. What if Ella's blindness wasn't irreversible? What if there was a chance that Dr. Stevens had ignored? One name in the file caught her attention. Similar cases, Lily Miller, misdiagnosed with terminal leukemia. The envelope slipped from her hands. Connections began to form in her mind, a disturbing web linking Ella's accident, Lily's death, and David's presence in her life. Suddenly, the chance that had brought David to his garden seemed like something far from coincidence. Could it be possible that this man, who had lost his daughter to the same doctor, was there for revenge? That night, as he drove home, Victor was torn between hope and fear. What did David really want? Why get so close to Ella? And why send that file anonymously? The answers were closer than he realized, and they would reveal a dark conspiracy that would challenge everything he believed about loyalty, justice, in the true nature of revenge. The waning moon dimly lit Victor's office as he typed furiously, immersed in an investigation that had consumed his last 72 hours. Pages and pages of medical records, financial reports, and time-worn photographs covered the mahogany desk. In the center was the photo of David with a little girl, his late daughter Lily. The same anomalies in the tests, the same neurologist, the same failed experimental treatment, Victor muttered, connecting the dots that formed a disturbing pattern. In the morning, Victor called an urgent meeting with his most trusted lawyers. I want everything on Dr. Stevens. I want to know about every penny that has come in and out of his accounts for the last 10 years. I want to know who is protecting him. As the lawyers left, Victor remained gazing out at the garden, where Ella was practicing identifying flowers by touch, guided by David's quiet voice. Their closeness no longer bothered him, now it terrified him. Sir, David is online too. He says he needs to speak with you urgently, his secretary announced. David's voice sounded tense. Mr. Stone, I need to cancel tomorrow's work. I have an important doctor's appointment for Ella. Ella! Why would you be taking my daughter to the doctor? Victor felt a chill run down his spine. A heavy silence filled the line. I think we need to talk in person. Tonight, after Ella goes to bed. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Victor canceled all his meetings and returned home to find Ella and David in the garden, sharing stories as usual. Watching them, Victor could no longer distinguish innocence from manipulation. The intentions behind David's kindness now seemed dark and threatening. When Ella finally fell asleep, David was waiting in the office. Without preamble, he placed a folder on the table. I believe you've already received similar information, the bricklayer began, his face a mask of contained emotion. I was the one who sent the first envelope. I needed to know if you were alert enough to realize what's going on. And what exactly is happening, Mr. Miller? Victor's voice was icy. David opened the folder. Dr. Stevens isn't just incompetent. He's a criminal. He's conducting unauthorized experiments, misdiagnosing patients to include them in his protocols. My Lily didn't have leukemia. She had a treatable condition that was deliberately misdiagnosed. And Ella? Your daughter is not permanently blind. Her condition can be reversed with proper treatment. David took a deep breath. Mr. Stone, your daughter and mine were victims of the same man. The revelation hit Victor like a bolt of lightning. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried. David's bitter laughter echoed through the room. Dr. Stevens is protected by powerful people. I have proof, but I need someone with enough resources to expose him. So you got close to my daughter to manipulate me, Victor accused, his anger rising. David's eyes flashed with intensity. I sought employment here because I knew his daughter had been a patient of his. But I approached Ella because, his voice faltered, because she reminds me of my Lily. And because no child should ever have to go through what our daughters did. Victor stared at the man before him, torn between distrust and hope. I'm not asking you to trust me, David continued. I'm asking you to trust the evidence. He slid another folder across the table. I got in touch with Dr. Maya Green, an expert in ocular neurology. She reviewed Ella's tests and confirmed it. There is a treatment, but we need to protect her from Dr. Stevens. He can't know we're investigating him. Why not? Because Ella isn't the only one. There are other children, and I believe Stevens is about to begin a new phase of his experiments. David hesitated. A few years ago, I tried to confront him directly. A week later, Lily had an unexpected complication. 2 days later, she was dead. The air seemed to freeze between the two men. The suspicion David had just revealed was so monstrous, it defied comprehension. A respected doctor deliberately harming patients to advance his research. I need you to take Ella to see Dr. Green tomorrow, David said. She's agreed to meet us discreetly. If we can confirm that Ella can regain her sight. We'll do more than that, Victor interrupted, a fierce determination lighting his eyes. If what you're saying is true, we'll destroy Stevens and everyone who protects him. The plan began to take shape as the night wore on. Victor would mobilize his resources, media contacts, private investigators, elite lawyers. David would contribute his knowledge, meticulously gathered during years of solitary research, including the names of other affected families. The next day, under the guise of a family outing, Victor took Ella to Dr. Green's discreet clinic. The examination was exhaustive, but it confirmed the unthinkable. Ella's blindness was reversible. The original diagnosis had been at best grossly incompetent, at worst deliberately falsified. As they left the clinic, Victor held his daughter's hand with new determination. What had begun as suspicion had turned into a mission. Two fathers, a white billionaire and a black bricklayer, both shattered by the same evil force, were now united by a common goal: justice for their daughters and protection for the children who could still fall victim. What Dr. Stevens could not have imagined was that while he was quietly going about his luxurious medical routine, a merciless storm was brewing on the horizon, a storm that would leave no stone unturned in his carefully constructed empire of lies. The courtroom was deathly silent as Dr. Stevens was let out in handcuffs. His empire of lies had collapsed in a matter of hours, exposed by the unlikely alliance between Victor Stone and David Miller. "This is just the beginning," announced the prosecutor. "Investigations have already identified more than 40 children affected by Dr. Stevens's fraudulent diagnoses." As they left the courthouse, reporters surrounded Victor and David. Ella, holding both of their hands tightly, wore a serene smile. His eyes, once empty, now followed the movements around him with increasing precision. "Mr. Stone, how did you discover the fraud?" asked a reporter. "The truth finds unexpected paths," Victor replied, exchanging a meaningful glance with David. "Sometimes we have to lose everything to see what really matters." 3 months later, in a discreet ceremony, the Lilly Foundation opened its doors. The treatment center, built in record time with Victor's resources, was already treating 15 children misdiagnosed by Stevens. "We didn't just want justice," David explained during the inauguration. "We wanted to turn that pain into something that could save other families." Dr. Green, now the foundation's medical director, had adapted Stevens's experimental protocol. Ironically, his research could have saved countless lives, including Lily's, if it weren't for greed. Ella, whose vision was improving weekly, became the face of the foundation. Her story inspired families to seek second medical opinions and question seemingly definitive diagnoses. Meanwhile, Stevens's financial empire crumbled. Hospitals associated with him faced million-dollar lawsuits. Colleagues who had covered up his practices were indicted. The system that had protected his negligence for so many years was now turning against him. Victor, transformed by the experience, completely reorganized his priorities. Stone Construction, once focused exclusively on profit, now allocated 30% of its projects to children's hospitals and medical research centers. "Ella taught me that our eyes can be open, but we still don't see what matters," he confessed in a rare interview. On a particularly meaningful afternoon, while Ella played with other children in the foundation's garden, Victor found David watching the scene with tears in his eyes. "Lily would be 11 today," the former bricklayer remarked. Victor nodded silently. After a moment, he asked, "Do you think we did her justice?" David watched the children playing. "Justice is different from revenge. Revenge would have been to destroy Stevens and stop there. Justice is ensuring that his evil is not repeated." "You know what haunts me the most?" Victor continued. "If it weren't for you, I would never have discovered the truth. I would have spent the rest of my life away from my own daughter, believing that her condition was irreversible. And if it weren't for you," David replied, "I would never have been able to expose Stevens." My voice alone didn't have the necessary reach. That week, a special child arrived at the foundation, Lucy Adams, 7 years old, diagnosed with the same condition as Ella. Her parents, unable to afford private treatment, had lost hope until they saw a report about the Lilly Foundation. "You can always tell when a child regains their sight," explained Dr. Green, watching Lucy during her first consultation. "There's a moment when their eyes begin to follow the world, and then suddenly they light up with recognition." A year after Stevens' trial, the garden of the Lilly Foundation witnessed a special celebration. Ella, now nearly fully sighted, blew out the candles on her birthday cake. At her side, Lucy and other recovered children applauded. Victor, watching the scene, realized that his own blindness had been cured as much as Ella's. Before David came into his life, he had merely existed, accumulating wealth, losing human connections, hiding behind walls of privilege. There is a blindness worse than physical blindness, he confided to David. It is the blindness of those who see only money, status, and power. On the main wall of the foundation, a simple plaque displayed a powerful message in memory of Lily Miller, who taught us to see beyond appearances. And so from a shared tragedy, an unlikely partnership was born that transformed lives and redefined the meaning of family, proving that the strongest bonds are not necessarily those of blood, but those forged by compassion, shared purpose, and the understanding that our differences are insignificant in the face of the values that unite us. If this story of transformation and hope resonated with you, make sure to subscribe for more stories that remind us all that true strength comes from what we give, not what we have. Sometimes it's only through loss that we truly find what matters.